You're joining the Loudr Lawyer Network, the podcast where we sit down with the law firm owners, attorneys, and visionaries that are making the most noise in the legal landscape nationwide to find out the secrets to their success. Other podcasts think they're getting loud, but we're getting louder. Let's get into it.
Hey, welcome to the Loudr Lawyer Network. I'm Raje, and we gather business associates from all over the law firms, all over the United States, and help them scale to $1 million months, collecting powerful strategies and connections. And my connection today is none other than Jon David Huffman. Jon, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm very thankful to be here with you today.
Yeah, I'm very thankful for you to be here. We were talking, I have a unique way of finding out about attorneys and their journey. So take me back to the time before you became an attorney and what led you to the process to specifically come into your commercial litigation, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Tell me that story.
Yes. So there's sort of two stories in the midst of this. So I had a neighbor, my family home, sort of their neighbor was a lawyer, and his name was Marshall Jaffe. And in my early 20s, we kind of became friends. He was probably in his 50s. He was really more friends with my dad, but our families were close. And Marshall encouraged me to go to law school. Nobody in my family had ever been a lawyer before. It didn't really even come into to my mind to be one. But we sort of became friends. We'd play some board games together. We'd hang out together. He invited me to his law firm, sort of mentored me, and really believed in me and said, you can do this if you want. And that was sort of what opened my eyes to doing it. I've always been very grateful. You know how somebody can sort of believe in you, give you a word of encouragement. It can change your whole life trajectory. Well, that's right. What Marshall did for me. I wish I could say thank you more to Marshall, but he actually died in my last year of law school early and unexpectedly. But I'm part of his legacy, living on that encouragement. And then the other thing that really was impactful in my life that sort of helped me choose the type of law and to become a lawyer as well is my family was involved in the type of litigation that I now do for a long period of time. In fact, one of their cases went on for over a decade.
Wow.
And through that process, I watched my mom and my dad go through the stress and everything that goes along with that. And in particular, my mom, and sort of watching them and living through that is really, really built a lot of, empathy for people going through the types of disputes that we do, which are business disputes, real estate disputes, and fraud, and in those contexts. And so they had a lawyer that represented them in those cases, and he wound up and got sanctioned by the trial court, the appellate court, and by the State Bar of Georgia for his conduct in their cases. And I have a very vivid memory of taking my dad, and my family was not very well off. They were kind of middle class, and since then they've done a little better. But at the time, they didn't have a lot of money. My dad drove over and dropped off his old Pontiac Bonneville as a final payment to this lawyer, and I drove a different car to drive him home. And I just had a very vivid memory of doing that, and then later learning some years later that this guy, had gotten all these sort of sanctions and gotten in trouble for his conduct. So we had a bad lawyer. And so part of my life mission in building a firm and doing what I'm doing is to prevent that from happening to another family as much as possible.
Well, man, that's very honorable, and that goes a long way to find out that you are in the type of law you are in because of what your family went through, and being a first generation lawyer for your family that's a big step. That's very impressive, man.
Yeah.
That's a blessing.
It is a blessing. Thank you.
Truly a blessing. Do you remember your first case that you had when you started your firm? Now, did you work for someone else, or did you start your own firm right out the gate out of law school?
Yeah, so my partner, Todd Poole, hired me right out of law school. So we're now partners, but, about 14 years ago, I was his employee, and I actually worked for him for a couple of years longer than that during law school, during the summers, one summer. My very first case, I'm trying to think if I can remember my very first case that came in. I can remember my first trial. I'm not sure if I can remember my very first case. It didn't last long. I do remember that. I had a few cases right at the beginning as I was sort of bringing in some cases. But my very first trial, if you'd like to hear about that.
Yes, absolutely.
My very first jury trial, I represented two individuals in a fraud scheme. They had two buddies of theirs defraud them out of $80,000. And the scheme basically went like this at a high level. Two of their friends had convinced them to put up $80,000 to pay for transfer fees and taxes. And in exchange, they were supposed to get a piece of a $3 million inheritance. If it sounds like a Nigerian email scam, that is kind of what it was on steroids. It was very souped up. And the two clients, one was a financial journalist and one was an accountant. And it was in that case that I started to see sort of the seeds of what I learned about fraud cases, which was no matter the education level or experience level, anyone is susceptible to being defrauded. Because the two people that defrauded my two clients, one was his next door neighbor, literal next door neighbor to him, and one was a fraternity brother. And they had both known them for 9 years. And so that trust was high. And that was the doorway that opened sort of the con to play out.
For those out there that may not know what because you're a commercial litigation lawyer, explain the difference between that. On my show, I talk to personal injury attorneys and stuff. So I was kind of doing a comparison of what personal injury involving, the client, the victim, and their injuries and their medical bills and things of that nature. And whereas on your end, you deal with businesses and unethical things, embezzlement, fraud, things of that nature. Can you kind of explain the difference in that? Because you go to trial a lot more than what a PI would, correct?
Well, it probably depends on the PI lawyer, but at least for our niche, I do go to trial quite frequently. I've done about 7 jury trials in the last 18 months. That's a lot in any practice, really. But yeah, so the real, let me give you a few examples. It's the best way to look at it. So we deal with a lot of businesses that are going up against each other, a lot of partnerships. So, a couple guys, own a business, and then all of a sudden they get into a dispute with each other. I've got a case that we're just sort of wrapping up now. It's like a construction business, pretty successful construction business. They went in and did major apartment family renovations.
Right.
And one of the business partners had what appeared to be like a gambling addiction, and he would just take money right out of the company and blow it. And he got probably into drugs and other things like that. It's sort of an extreme example, but he started plundering the company. We represented the other business partner to help him sort through that, lock down the money, eventually dissolve the entity, sort of reboot his life with different partners and sort of get out of that relationship. We do a lot of real estate disputes. So you see, partners that own multifamily or commercial buildings together. Sometimes it's more of an honest dispute where people just disagree, but a lot of times in a lot of our cases, we have fraud or embezzlement or misappropriation of funds. And that's sort of the genesis for the dispute. We deal with family businesses where you've got maybe one family member going rogue and taking money out of the business. Those are the kind of situations that we're often in. But the core, probably 80%, what we see, if there's a pattern, has some deceit, some fraud component in it, regardless of it, whether it's in business or in real estate or intellectual property.
Give me an example of some of the in terms when it comes to intellectual property. What types of fraud cases are there? Yeah,
so we do a lot of trade secret related cases. So people steal trade secrets of companies. I mean, it could be confidential and proprietary calculations. I had one just recently, and I can't really get into the details, but it was a manufacturing company, and they had a proprietary way of calculating different loads and other engineering calculations that they were doing. That it was alleged that one of the employees stole the trade secrets. You see, we're presenting individual right now as patents. We'll get a detail patent is currently in litigation, but there's a big company that licensed the patent and decided just not to, not to pay for it anymore, trying to exploit someone who's at an obvious economic disadvantage to them. So, hundreds of millions of dollar kind of company. And so you see all sorts of like theft and fraud in those situations oftentimes they take place within a partnership or within a deal, a joint venture, or some other kind of transaction that's going to take place.
Yeah. And given the scope of the landscape in business today, AI is a big component. How have you had to deal with AI in your business? Because AI can practically duplicate spot on, terms of transactions, things of that nature. How have you come across that?
We have. I'm waiting for a good case to come in where somebody's used AI to sort of create fake images or fake video. I'm not seeing that yet, but I'm waiting. And litigation we tend to drag a little bit on what's going on because people do something and then there's a dispute. So there's a lag in what we see. I haven't seen any of those cases yet. I'll tell you where we're seeing AI the most. We see AI playing a big part in advising our clients incorrectly. So I'll give you an example. I got a client that wants to hire me, thinks they have a claim, goes to chat or Claude or whatever, types in the information, gets an opinion, and then they come to us and we spend a lot of time telling them the differences between what AI has told them and what the law actually is. Because as you probably know, you go to AI and you type something in, I mean, it's going to affirm you. I mean, it's going to give you a positive spin generally on what you're asking it. Oh, that's a good idea, it says, and it runs off with that. And so it's very unhelpful in the law because people put in their legal question and they get an affirming response, and it's not always that way. So we are spending a lot of time trying to educate clients. If I could give potential clients or clients advice when using AI, because I can't prevent people from using it.
Right.
The thing that I would recommend is after you get whatever information you want, play devil's advocate with it. Tell it, hey, you're wrong, Claude. And you know why you're wrong, ? And see what it does and make it take the opposing view for a second. And you might see something that's equally as incorrect, but with a different perspective on your legal issue. And so we are spending a lot of time arguing with clients and discussing with them and having a lot of conversation about why AI is wrong in their particular situation.
That's good advice right there. And with that said, you take the approach, explain your winning strategy in complex litigation.
Yeah, so our winning strategy probably could be summed up in one of our core values, which is that we apply persistent, unrelenting pressure. What a client wants, I believe, mostly when they hire our firm is they want a warrior. They want to hire somebody that's going to go to war for them, go to battle, do the hard things, and continue to apply pressure. And so a lot of the principles of, warfare, we would take and try to apply it to litigation. But one of those, and we like to say it this way because it sort of applies to all types of personalities, because there may be some lawyers that don't like to view themselves as a warrior, but everybody can apply pressure, and everybody can apply pressure in a way that's professional, depending upon how people view that. And so we like to tell our lawyers, follow up, take the next step, intentionally work the case. Don't delay. and throughout the case. And we find that as the pressure builds, then the case resolves. And that could be a trial, it could be a settlement, it could be a key deposition that leads to some admissions, that leads to resolving the case. There are moments in each case where settlement possibilities spike. They don't always settle, of course, but there are key moments in cases where the opportunity to resolve the case spikes. And so getting to those points as quickly as possible is the best thing for the client. And so that's our strategy from a high level.
Which leads me to, what are some of the key considerations and that you go through navigating through a high stakes legal dispute?
Yeah, I mean, each case is different. And so each case requires sort of a custom strategy to figure out what is the best fit, what is the best strategy for this particular case. But there are themes. One of the themes is, of course, trying to figure out, what does the client want? What do they realistically want in the case? And sometimes, and for the most part, clients want money. But there are particular types of case where money is not as high of a factor as you might think. Somebody gets defrauded. I mean, let's take a case that we've done several times through the firm, a classic sort of honeypot fraud case. Okay, somebody develops a relationship with somebody. It could be online, it could be in person, at a gym. You know, we had one, they sort of get involved emotionally. Sometimes it could be just a friendship. Sometimes it could be romantic. And through that relationship, the con artist takes money, convinces them to give money to them. And that type of situation, some clients are looking more for justice than they are really to recover money from that person. I mean, the money, it would be great. They're never going to turn it down. But there is a sense of restoration, sometimes retribution upon somebody who has done something to them. And so that's one of the things that we look at. I mean, each case has its own strategy. It'd be probably too nuanced to go through the different ways. But we're looking at documents, we're looking at clients, we're looking, you know, at their credibility and history to try to solve each case in a custom way to meet the client's goals as effective as possible.
You said something that was earlier in the conversation. You were talking about the scams that are run, and that they're run all over the place. What happens when you have a client? Because I know of an individual that sent, him and his wife sent $60,000 to an individual. They had been dealing with real estate and putting things together, but it had to do with the bank. So the bank themselves called and said, "We didn't get the money. You have to go through and you have to send it again." So someone had infiltrated the whole transition of them sending money to the bank, and then someone from claiming to be a bank representative with the same layouts. That's why I was talking to you about the AI aspect. Said that this didn't happen and it didn't go through, so they need to send it again. And they got scammed out of got scammed out of $60,000.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. That's terrible, and it's not that uncommon actually. One thing that they started requiring in Georgia, I believe they require closing attorneys. In Georgia, you have to have an attorney to close real estate, to buy and sell real estate. And every closing attorney, I don't know whether they're required by law or they do it by practice, but in the last few years, they started putting in their emails, you've got to call to verify our wire instructions, because people are intercepting these transactions and diverting the money to another financial institution. And I've seen some cases where we thought that we could go recover the money. Sometimes if you get on it quick and you can freeze it, you may need to involve the police. But we have had money get wired around. I mean, obviously, if it goes to another institution, you can, if you do it quick enough, you can freeze it and then try to recover it. But this is an unfortunate thing that's happened to a lot of people and is out there. And people should be aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, this day and time, everything from the crypto scams to, you know, banking scams and people being able to hack, your line of work is more important than ever in protecting those individuals. Now, you protect business interests of individuals, real estate, corporations, things of that nature. And usually when you're there representing the client, you're not doing it on a contingency like a personal injury would for like injuries and things of that nature. Tell me how that works out. How does that work out?
Sure. Yeah, the majority of our cases are pursued on an hourly arrangement. So we're being paid on an hourly basis. We do take some cases on a contingency, and sometimes we do like a hybrid approach where we take like a smaller contingency and a lesser hourly rate, sort of like half and half. But you're right. The majority of the cases that we do are on an hourly basis.
And is that because you have to be paid for your time, correct? Because of the time that you put in, and a lot of times there's not recovery on the other side. Or am I mistaken?
Well, yeah, there's a variety of reasons that the cases, traditionally commercial litigation has been done on an hourly basis. Sometimes the amount in dispute is large enough where clients would not want to even give a contingency. You know, if you're fighting over a few $1 million, they'd much rather pay hourly for the likelihood that the case may settle. You know, you may be $50,000 into a multi-million-dollar case and resolve it. You know, if you paid 40% of $2 million, it'd be $500,000. So they may save hundreds of thousands of dollars. So traditionally, and at our firm, and at almost every other firm that I'm aware of, most of these cases are done at an hourly. If they do get large enough and the liability is clear enough and the collectability is clear, you know, we don't often have insurance companies on the other side of our cases, like a personal injury case would, then we do take some cases on contingency.
Good, right. In terms of how people find out about you, or how do you get your business? Personal injury attorneys, keep using them as the go-to, because I'm used to feel they do a lot of like digital marketing and billboards and social media platforms. But how do you get business? How does business come in for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So traditionally, most of our business is coming through referrals. So only in the last, say, year and a half or so have we done any digital marketing, and it would look very similar to a personal injury firm, a little bit more niched out. I mean, we're a little bit more specific because we don't have as broad a market as they would. And I'm not on a billboard yet. Don't have any plans either, but you know, maybe someday, I don't know, in a large enough market. But we do run some videos. We have run some ads on streaming, but historically, currently most of our business comes from referrals, which are primarily other lawyers. So you have your real estate transaction lawyers, you've got your deal lawyers, like a merger and acquisition lawyer, you've got your intellectual property guys that are filing for trademarks and copyrights and patents and things like that. And the lawyers that do the transactional work don't tend to litigate, and the litigators tend not to do the transactional work. So it's sort of a natural referral partnership between us.
Right. So whereas personal injuries attorneys, their reputation is built on visual, how much they're seen or heard. In your case, it's based, your reputation referrals is based on the fact that you're a good lawyer and you win, you get results. Would that be fair to say?
It's more reputational based, because the lawyers that are referring to cases know us or have seen our results, you know, and have sent us. Most of them have been sending us cases through the years, and sort of know the results that we get for our clients. So,
and how are you ranked, if I can ask? What are you ranked at in terms of your line of work in business?
Yeah,
what accolades do you have?
Well, we don't really have rankings. It's sort of against the bar rules, but I am recognized by most of the publications as being a good lawyer in my field. I'll just say that. So, and I think that we at our firm provide an excellent service to our clients, because, you know, there's a lot of law firms that they don't have this emphasis. Like my mother and father, every case that we bring into the firm, I want us to do our best to add value to the client. That is the key. And that's what we preach and teach around our firm. We don't want to take a case and just milk it for fees, and lose the case. We don't win everything, and our judgment's not perfect. But as best as we can, we add value to each and every client. And that value may be to tell the client, look, this is not worth fighting. Like there's not enough money at stake to fight this. And I will tell you, every single day we turn down cases and tell them exactly that. It may be to tell the client, look, you shouldn't pursue this anymore because I don't think we can get any money from this guy in the end. It may be to tell a client, look, you've done the wrong thing, because we do represent, the defendants in cases as well. And you need to pay up and you need to resolve this case, to mitigate your liability. I got 4 kids, and, I go home and they ask me questions about what I do. And, hey, Dad, do you ever represent the bad guy, in a case? And, it's not that easy. It's not that black and white, of course.
Right.
It might be in a 9-year-old's mind. But, so I say sometimes, we do represent the person that maybe didn't do the right thing. Well, what do you tell them? Well, I tell them to do the right thing now. That's what we're about. And we're about adding value to each and every client as much as possible.
Right. I'm happy you said that you looked at both ends, because I was going to ask you that. What happens when you have a situation, if someone's come to you, they've hired you, they're paying you, and you find discrepancies in what they're doing? What do you do in a situation like that to someone who is paying you big money?
Well, you confront them about it, and you try to give them the best advice. And of course, it's their decision what they want to do. But, I've found through the years, I'm not a real good lawyer if I don't think my client's being honest with me. I'm not real good for them anymore. If I lose sort of faith in their story, then I'm not going to be the best lawyer for them. Now, I do think there are some lawyers that are great at pretending, and I'm just not one of them. And so my advice is to try to resolve the case if there's some discrepancy in the case. But, there is a temptation by lawyers, if you're getting paid, to keep the case going and continue to get paid. And we solve this problem by just trying to keep our funnel large enough that there's always new cases coming in.
Right.
So if we get into a situation, we don't have that temptation as much. We just do what's right. And I think doing what's right for the client in the long term is always going to be what's right for the firm and for us.
Right. No, absolutely. Have you ever just had to just tell a client, I can't represent you anymore? There's too many.
Yes, we have. We've had some clients that I remember a client some years ago that I represented for a number of years, and I would have never thought they were dishonest. I would have never, in my wildest imagination, thought they were just upright people. In fact, I'd represented them in another case before the one I'm talking about, and we got deep into the case and got ready for trial, and the lawyer pointed out to me that my client had basically forged a bunch of documents. Like a forgery, in that they had created fake documents to support them. And I remember thinking to myself, there's just no way. In fact, I wrote back to the lawyer and I was like, there's no way. I've been representing these people for years. Like, you're wrong. And I was wrong. Right. And so when I discovered this, which turned out, this is not just a civil problem. This turns into like a potential criminal problem. Right. In the case, my advice was, like, you got to walk away from your claim, and you need to pay them some attorney's fees and be done with it. And I actually negotiated a good resolution for them, and they terminated me, hired a new lawyer, and paid twice, and then they paid twice as much at the end. Wow. Than my negotiated resolution for them. So it does happen where people are not being honest, but it's pretty rare. But that's an extreme. That's an extreme one. Most of the time, you don't really know 100%. Like, their story doesn't quite go straight, kind of zigzags and doesn't quite make sense, but you're not 100% sure. But when you catch somebody, creating their own documents and then they acknowledge it,
Yeah, that's pretty much wearing that guilty hat on top of their head.
Right.
Have you ever had a situation to where you've come across, we talked about that, things where they come borderline criminal, but have you ever been in a situation where you've had to work with, say, PI attorneys involving like truckers and the companies and things of that nature. Have you ever ran across anything of that nature?
We do work with personal injury lawyers quite frequently when they're pursuing people and they need collection assistance. That's where we work the most with personal injury lawyers, because we don't really do personal injury here at all. But occasionally we'll get a client that, we'll call it like a partnership with a PI firm. They will be pursuing a case. It could be a wrongful death or a catastrophic injury against the defendant, and the defendant doesn't have clear insurance or is maybe acting very squirrely with whether you can collect. For instance, we had a case where a PI attorney got a 8-figure judgment against the company, and they were an international company. And instead of sort of paying the judgment and making it right, they started transferring assets around and doing what we call like a fraudulent transfer, plundering the company, creating a new company, and playing a bunch of shell games with entities. And so we got involved. My partner, Todd Poole, actually led that case. And so far, I think they've recovered something like $13 million.
Wow. This was a PI firm was doing this?
Well, the PI firm got the judgment for the injury, right? But then they had a piece of paper that they couldn't collect, right? They couldn't collect the money from
the opposite party.
Correct. And that was because the company they got the judgment against, basically tried to shut down that entity and start a new one and play game. It was really complex, and a lot of the documents were in a foreign language that we had to deal with. And he did, and another lawyer here did a great job.
Wow.
And that case is still going on, so I don't want to get into too much detail, but there was a great recovery. We do a good bit of that when personal injury lawyers are not able to collect or there's not obvious insurance out there.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing. So it's lawyers helping lawyers, and then lawyers against lawyers when there's fraud happening. I mean, that's going to sleep every night. I know you feel good because you do the right thing. You stated you just, it's not worth it to you.
It's not worth it. I try to do the right thing every day, and I'm not perfect, but I'm striving in that direction.
Hey, that's a beautiful thing. When you hear the term Loudr Lawyer, what does the term Loudr Lawyer mean to you?
Loudr Lawyer means a lawyer who wants to get up every day and add value to his clients, add value to his team, add value to his family, and overall wants to add value to everyone around him. That's what I would say a Loudr Lawyer means to me.
Yeah, that's well said. Here at Loudr Media, we look at lawyers who it's just beyond the courtroom. It's beyond the client. It's into the community, and into everything that surrounds that community and stuff, bringing it all together. So well said. So Jon, if people want to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. They can go to our website at wefightfearlessly.com, and they can find me there.
Fearlessly.
wefightfearlessly.com, that's right. Or they can find me at jondavidhuffman.com individually.
Oh, okay. Well, man, I thank you for being a guest on the Loudr Lawyer Network, where we help attorneys scale to $1 million months through powerful strategies and connections. And you just answered a lot of beautiful questions for me. So I thank you.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed being on here with you.
All right. Thank you. Hold tight.
You're a fitness guy. I looked at your Instagram page, right?
Yes, I am. Hold on real quick. I'm trying to stop this.
Turn this on.
Hold on.
Thanks for being a part of the Loudr Lawyer Network. If you're enjoying the conversation, let us know. Give us a like and subscribe to never miss a thing. We'll see you next time right here on the Loudr Lawyer Network.